I've been keeping glass boxes full of water for a very long time. I started back in 1993 and I've had them off and on ever since. You've seen what I've done in the last 11 years, but there's so much that you didn't see. Back before social media, we did everything on our own. And the only way anyone ever saw it was if a friend or a family member came over, and when they did, I'd always be sitting there hoping they'd ask me questions about my aquariums. I remember back in like 2010, I had a 125 gallon in our living room, and my mom came over and brought a friend with her. Her friend was an animal lover and saw my tank and was like, "Oh, John, that's beautiful. Is that an arowana?" I swear it was the highlight of the whole visit for me. Unfortunately, the conversation about the aquarium only lasted about 2 minutes, and then we were off to do other things. Back then, as fish keepers, that's all we had. If we didn't have moments like that, this hobby would just be between me and my tanks. At least for me, anyway. I never really had a lot of friends.
Man, you are one pathetic loser.
Fast forward to 2012, and I started sharing everything about this hobby on my YouTube channel. I've never claimed to be an expert. I've never said I'm smarter than the next guy. I've just shared what I know, and for some reason, people liked it. There's been ups and there's been downs, and we've pretty much shared all of that with you. All of our successes and all of our failures. In the entire existence of our channel, you've seen what we've done. We started out exclusively as an African cichlid channel and then started expanding what we cover to include all kinds of fish. But there's been two things that have happened in the last couple of years that have completely changed the game for us. I want to share those things with you and why these things have had such a huge impact on the hobby for me and why I think you should consider doing something similar. Before I get into those two game changers though, let's talk about hobbies. When you start a new hobby, what happens? You go crazy over it, right? I picked up a new hobby back in the beginning of COVID and I went totally nuts. The hobby was scale modeling. This was so exciting. I was watching tons of content about it and obsessed over it for weeks until I finally said, okay, let me go buy all the stuff and do my first model. I went to Hobby Lobby, I ordered stuff online, and I got everything I needed to get started. And then I realized scale modeling is super hard for me because my vision is terrible. I haven't given up on it though. I just gotta wear readers when I do it. And that's kind of embarrassing. The reason I bring this up is because scale modeling is the perfect example of my point of this video. You rarely see someone that's into scale modeling that only does one type of model, like only does cars or only planes. Usually it'll start with one, like I started with cars, but then after a while it's like you're doing the same thing over and over and over, so to break the monotony, you'll try a plane or a battleship or something. Fish keeping can be very similar. I mean, yeah, you can try new fish, but if you've been doing this for a really long time, after a while, even that isn't a big deal anymore. At the end of the day, you're taking a glass box, you're filling it up with water, putting a filter on it, a heater, a light, and throwing some decorations in there, and then you get to go buy fish. Yeah, that's fun and all, but when you've done it like 100 times, it starts to lose its excitement. So what do? Do you just say, well, this is what it is, or do you try something new? Something completely different from what you're doing now? I decided to go with the latter and try some new things. And like I said in the beginning of this video, there's been two things that have completely changed this hobby for me. And let's finally now talk about those. The first should be a surprise to absolutely no one, and that's starting a saltwater tank. Back in February, Sean Hale and his crew came out here and helped me set up my first saltwater tank in the old fish house. I had a saltwater tank a long time ago and it was cool, but it didn't grab hold of me like this one did. Maybe it's the size of the tank or maybe it's the amount of fish I got in there. To be honest, I don't really know why this one had such a huge impact on me, but oh boy, it has. Now you might be thinking, what's the big deal? I mean, it's just adding salt to the water and turning up the blue lights, but there's so much more to it than that. When you cross over to the other side of this hobby, you find there's a whole other world that you've seen but didn't realize how cool it was. You've seen the really cool fish at your local fish store, and you've seen the guys on Tanked build some amazing aquariums, but there's so much more to it than that if you just open yourself up to it. I've always thought saltwater was cool, but didn't really pay a whole lot of attention to it. I'd just skim through the saltwater section at the fish store and be like, oh, that's cool. Lionfish are neat. Nemo. But that would be about it. Just a quick skim and I'm over to the freshwater section. Now that I'm into this, walking around the saltwater section is a completely different experience. I'm starting to recognize the different fish. I know which ones are more rare and maybe more difficult to keep, and I'm starting to know the difference between these fish. It is so much fun. I gotta be honest, when I go to the fish store now, I'm spending more time in the saltwater section than I do the freshwater. I've been looking at freshwater fish for 30 years, and really I don't feel like there's a whole lot that I haven't seen, but when I go to the saltwater section, it's like I'm seeing everything for the first time. And it's so exciting. And it's not just the fish. There's also all the gadgets and gizmos that the saltwater side has that I never really paid attention to before, like protein skimmers and all the fancy systems out there to automate your tank. It's fascinating stuff. Remember when this hobby was brand new for you and you'd be walking around the fish store just looking at everything and you're like, oh man, that right there, that's so cool. I want to put that with my fish. No, those can't go together because they fight. I like those, but I can't get those because they get too big for my tank. That might be really frustrating for you, and I know it's kind of weird for me to say this, but I kind of like that because it's like a challenge. You're walking through trying to find that perfect combination of fish that'll go together, and not only will they live together harmoniously, but they can also fit in the size tank you have. Well, when you enter the saltwater side, that whole process starts all over again. I didn't think it was going to be like that. I just thought it was going to be the same as it was in the past when I would just skim through the saltwater section, but once you slow down and pay attention, it's a completely different thing. And it's amazing. Now here's the thing. Am I trying to convince you to start a saltwater tank? Well, yeah, I kind of am. Because it's been so much fun for me, and I know it'll be fun for you, but I already know what you're thinking. Saltwater tanks are way too expensive. It's easy for you to say, John, because you didn't have to pay for that tank. And that's true, but forget about that. Don't think about how I got mine and how it's not fair. If you go into this with the mentality that saltwater tanks are just too expensive, and unless you're a YouTuber that gets everything for free, it's impossible to start, you could be missing out on the excitement that I'm feeling right now. In fact, I'm considering doing a project that would prove that saltwater tanks don't have to be overly expensive. Let me know in the comments section if you think I should do a saltwater tank on a budget. I already know exactly how I would do it, and I think it might surprise you. But I know saltwater tanks are not for everyone. Some of you have probably written them off and have no interest in ever trying them because you look at it as the saltwater side is the dark side. I get it. I'm going to do my best to try to change that, but we can't win every battle. So let's get back to the freshwater side. What could possibly have happened that changed everything for me? Well, the first thing I'm going to say is going to probably offend a lot of people, but what's new? Welcome to 2023, the time where everyone's offended. I grew up in an era where men were men. A man didn't wear skinny jeans or pull his hair back into a bun, and whenever something broke at the house, he called a guy to come and fix it. Men had dirty fingernails, didn't whine about their feelings, and would rather spend all day organizing their tool shed or digging a hole than go to some chick's baby shower. Side note, when did men start going to baby showers? Listen, men, at some point, you're gonna have to put your foot down. Baby showers are for women. When she says to you, hey, we're going to my friend from work's baby shower next Saturday, you need to grow some balls and say, no, I'm out. I've done that a few times and it usually leads to a fight, but I didn't go. Growing up, I, like most kids, idolized my father. He was the stereotypical man's man. My dad was the easiest person in the world to find. If you didn't see him in the house, you didn't need to look very far. Just go to the garage. And if he's not out there, he's probably in the yard building something or cutting down a tree, who knows? My dad unfortunately passed away in 1997, but if I had gone back to him and been like, hey dad, I'm gonna set up an aquarium and I'm gonna fill it full of the most beautiful plants you've ever seen, without any thought, his response would have been, oh, that's cool. You gonna put on a skirt and play with dolls when you're done? Oh, and don't forget when you're at the store later to pick up tampons, sweetie pie. Men and plants, they just weren't a thing. So when all the other YouTubers were telling me, hey, you should set up a planted tank, they're great and they're so much fun, I'd immediately think of my dad and playing with dolls, and I'd be like, nope, not this guy. I fought it forever until a couple of years ago when I finally caved. And let me tell you, the reaction to that was kind of the same reaction I had to saltwater tanks. When you enter the world of planted aquariums, you quickly realize there's so much more to them than just being pretty. Plants serve a huge function in an aquarium, and they can take your boring rocks and wood and make them look like a real piece of nature in your living room. I miss my dad a lot, but I'm kind of glad he's not here to hear me say that. The coolest part of entering the world of plants is all the cool things you can do with them to create your aquascape. This is something I never in a million years thought I'd be interested in, but it's really taken hold. It started a couple of years ago when I did a 5-gallon tank with Tropica plants. This is when Tropica was courting us to try to get us to sell their plants, and I was like, well, I'm not going to sell something I don't use, so let me try them out. I scaped that tank and had so much fun with it. I didn't know any of the aquascaping rules or strategies. I just put plants where I thought they'd look good, and they did. In fact, that tank is still in our fish room today, and we haven't changed a thing. I've always looked at other YouTubers like MD Fish Tanks, Tanner Serpa, and George Farmer with great admiration, but I never thought I'd ever be a part of their world. That's their thing, they're really good at it. I'm just gonna stay over here in my lane. But just playing around with these aquascapes has made me realize the appeal. You're creating a little nature art piece, and it doesn't matter what other people think. It just matters if you have fun. And I'm not really gonna get into all of the benefits of plants and all that stuff because I don't want you to think I'm trying to sell them to you. The reality is it's the aquascaping part of it that was the huge appeal to me. And in order to really get into aquascaping, I had to let plants in. So that's why I mentioned it. All I'm saying is, like the saltwater tank, entering the world of aquascaping and live plants is another thing that just completely changed this for me. But actually, the plants were before the saltwater tank. Maybe I should have done this video in a different order. The point of this video is the hobby of keeping glass boxes full of water is extraordinary. There's so many things to do, and I'm willing to bet if things are just kind of blah for you right now, and you need a spark to reignite your passion for it, just try something new. Don't just try new fish, make a drastic move. Try something you've never tried, even something you might be scared of. You might find that it's not as confusing and intimidating as you thought it was. And it might completely change this hobby for you like these two things did for me. It has completely reinvigorated everything for me. Thanks so much for hanging out with me while I ramble about this. This was a whole lot of fun to do. Hey, listen, don't forget to put down in the comment section if you want to see me do the saltwater tank on a budget. It's right down there below the subscribe button. You'll find the comment section. It's easy to find. Put it down there, and if I get a good enough response to it, maybe I'll try that out, or maybe I'll just do it anyway and act like it was because of your response. But anyway, who cares? Thank you so much for watching. I can't wait to see you on the next one. Bye.